For decades, humanity believed the space race was a closed chapter in our history books, a relic of the Cold War, a moment in time when superpowers competed not for resources or infrastructure, but for prestige, pride, and political symbolism. NASA planted the American flag on the moon, the Soviet Union faded, and the world assumed the race was over. But that belief, that assumption, may go down as one of the greatest miscalculations in modern history. Because right now, the greatest space race ever attempted is underway, and the winner will not just reach the moon, they will own the future. This race is not between two superpowers. It's between three: NASA, China, and SpaceX, a private company now powerful enough to challenge entire nations. Each one has a different goal, a different strategy, and a different vision for what humanity's future in space should look like. But the battleground is the same: the moon's south pole. A region so cold, so shadowed, so ancient, that sunlight hasn't touched parts of it in billions of years. A region scientists now believe holds something so valuable it could change space exploration forever. Vast reserves of frozen water ice. Water is the key. Water is air. Water is power. Water can be split into hydrogen and oxygen, creating rocket fuel. Whoever controls that ice controls the ability to refuel spacecraft on the moon. Whoever controls refueling controls transportation. And whoever controls transportation controls the economy of space. From lunar mining, to Mars missions, to asteroid harvesting, to deep space exploration that will redefine humanity's place in the universe. This isn't a race to plant a flag. It's a race to build a civilization. But before we get there, we have to understand how this new rivalry began. Because it didn't start with China's lunar missions or SpaceX's Starship. It started with something much quieter, much smaller, and far more unexpected. In 2003, China launched its first astronaut, Yang Liwei, aboard Shenzhou 5, a single astronaut in a single capsule, but it sent a shockwave through the geopolitical world. China had become only the third country in human history capable of independently putting humans into space. And while the world congratulated them politely, privately, there was concern. Because this was not just a technological milestone, it was a strategic signal. China wasn't trying to copy the space programs of the past. They were building the foundation of the future. Then came 2011, the moment that changed everything. That year, the United States Congress passed a law banning NASA from collaborating with China on the International Space Station. China was effectively barred from humanity's greatest cooperative space project, left out of a program used by 15 nations. The intention was to slow China's technological growth, to keep the ISS secure, and to preserve American leadership. But the result was the opposite. China didn't protest. China didn't push back. China didn't ask for access. China simply decided to build something better. And that decision triggered the most dramatic acceleration of a space program since Apollo. China developed a modular station architecture, advanced robotic arms, next-generation life support systems, orbital construction capabilities, multiple docking ports, autonomous resupply vehicles, and in 2021, they launched the core module of Tiangong, a sleek, modern, expandable station built entirely without foreign help. Tiangong was more than a laboratory. It was a warning, a quiet, undeniable message. China will not wait for anyone. China will not slow down. China is coming. While the ISS spends its remaining years in orbit, Tiangong is just entering its prime, and the technological momentum behind it is pointing directly toward the moon. But here's where the race intensifies, because China is not alone on the track. NASA, despite political gridlock, still possesses the most advanced scientific missions in the world. James Webb, Europa Clipper, Perseverance, Ingenuity, the Deep Space Network. NASA's greatest strength has always been exploration. Missions so complex, so precise, so daring that no other space agency can match them. But human exploration requires stability, funding, and support, and that's where NASA faces its biggest challenge. Artemis, the United States' plan to return humans to the moon, has faced delay after delay. Costs keep rising. Politicians keep arguing. Schedules keep slipping. And the rocket meant to carry astronauts, the Space Launch System, is so expensive that NASA can only afford to launch it rarely. NASA has brilliance. NASA has experience. NASA has unparalleled scientific legacy. But NASA is fighting against time. And in that vacuum, a private company stepped in, one that now threatens to leap so far ahead that it could outpace both NASA and China. SpaceX. SpaceX doesn't operate like a government agency. SpaceX doesn't operate like a traditional contractor. SpaceX operates like a Silicon Valley startup strapped to the world's most powerful rocket engine. Every failure is a data point. Every explosion is a lesson. Every redesign is implemented immediately, not years later. Starship, the largest rocket ever built, is not designed for a few missions per year. It is designed for hundreds. Stainless steel, fully reusable, tower-caught, mass-produced, fueled by Raptor engines that push the limits of methane combustion. SpaceX isn't trying to make rockets cheaper. SpaceX is trying to make rockets disposable, not in hardware, but in cost. And that threatens both of its rivals. Because China is racing to copy the same breakthrough, stainless steel reusable methane rockets. Their newest designs, Juke 3 and others, are built to follow the same principles that made Falcon 9 unbeatable. Rockets that land. Rockets that relaunch. Rockets that transform space access from a rare event into a routine operation. And the terrifying part for NASA? China has the manufacturing power to scale faster than anyone. Factories, welders, steelworks, state funding, national coordination. China can build rockets, engines, and infrastructure at speeds that would overwhelm any private company. SpaceX has innovation. China has industrial force. NASA has experience. And the moon has resources that all three want. This is why the 2020s have become the most consequential decade in space since Apollo. Because now, for the first time ever, three different entities with three different philosophies are colliding in the same place, at the same time, chasing the same goal. So let's examine what each one truly wants. China's vision is long-term. A permanent, nuclear-powered lunar base, robotic construction systems, 3D printed habitats, fuel extraction plants, a cislunar communications network, a base that can host international partners, forming a China-led lunar alliance. NASA's vision mirrors Apollo in spirit, but not in structure. Artemis aims for human landings, then short stays, then a series of test habitats, then a sustainable base shared with international partners. NASA wants to lead the world in space, but cannot do it alone anymore. And then there's SpaceX. SpaceX wants something completely different. SpaceX wants to make the moon part of a supply chain, a refueling stop on the road to Mars, a staging point, a logistical tool. Not the goal, but the gateway. Three visions, three strategies, all intersecting on one dusty world. But here's the twist that almost nobody sees coming. The winner of this race may not be the one who lands first. It may be the one who builds the first self-sustaining system. The first base that can survive a lunar night. The first reactor that can power a habitat for months. The first mining robot that can extract ice. The first facility that turns lunar soil into usable materials. The first communication network that controls cislunar space. The first refueling depot that can supply vehicles heading to Mars. Landing is the headline. Infrastructure is the power. This is why China has launched robotic landers that map ice deposits with increasing precision. This is why NASA is funding small companies to test technologies for power, mobility, and construction. This is why SpaceX is rapidly advancing Starship variants capable of delivering dozens of tons of equipment in a single mission. Because whoever builds first wins. But let's be brutally honest. The race is closer than anyone wants to admit. China has momentum, national strategy, and global partnerships. NASA has legacy, allies, and scientific mastery. SpaceX has speed, innovation, and cost dominance. Each one has a weakness. China lacks flight-proven reusability. NASA lacks political stability. SpaceX lacks national backing and long-term security. Each one has an edge. China can scale rapidly. NASA can coordinate globally. SpaceX can evolve faster than anyone. So, who is truly ahead? That depends on the finish line. If the finish line is the first next human on the moon, NASA and SpaceX have the advantage if Artemis stays on track. If the finish line is the first operational lunar base, China has a real shot. If the finish line is deep space infrastructure, SpaceX may leap ahead entirely. But here's the truth. History will remember. The winner of this race will determine who leads humanity in the 21st century. The moon is not just a destination. It is territory, infrastructure, resources, fuel, power, a stepping stone to Mars, asteroids, and beyond. And the nation, or company, that controls it will control the first interplanetary economy in human history. China knows it. NASA knows it. SpaceX knows it. And soon, the world will know it too. Because this time, the space race is not about who gets there first. It's about who never leaves. But the part almost no one is talking about, the part that will truly decide the winner of this race, is something far bigger than rockets, landers, or even bases. It's what happens after the first lunar outposts are built. Because the real revolution won't come from landing humans or planting flags. It will come from building an entire economy beyond Earth. And right now, each player, NASA, China, and SpaceX, is quietly preparing for a future in which space isn't a place you visit, but a place you use. Imagine this. Fleets of robotic miners digging into permanently shadowed craters, extracting water ice by the ton. Giant microwave antennas transmitting power across miles of lunar terrain. 3D printed structures built from regolith, rising like metallic bones from the moon's surface. Solar farms, rover highways, fuel plants, relay towers, all working together in an automated network that runs day and night, whether astronauts are present or not. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's the blueprint for the first lunar industrial zone. And here's the twist most people aren't ready to hear. China is designing its systems to operate even without astronauts on the surface. Autonomous robots, swarm construction units, AI-guided excavators, self-repairing power grids. China understands that whoever automates the moon first gains an advantage that humans cannot match. A presence that never sleeps, never tires, never needs to return home. This is why their Tiangong missions have become progressively more robotic, more complex, and more resource-focused. NASA, meanwhile, is betting on international cooperation, the Artemis Accords, a diplomatic network that already includes more than 30 nations. Their goal is clear. If the US leads the rules of space, then the US leads the future. SpaceX is betting on something even bigger: scalability. If Starship reaches its goal, rapid reusability, fast turnaround, mass production, then SpaceX won't build stations or mines. They'll build the transportation grid, the shipping lanes, the delivery system for an entire off-world economy. And whoever controls the transport layer controls every other layer that sits on top of it. This is why the rivalry is so dangerous, so unpredictable, so game-changing. Because each competitor isn't trying to win the same race. They're trying to win the race after the race. And the stakes go even further, beyond economics, beyond resources, beyond the moon. Consider cislunar space, the vast region between Earth and the moon, where satellites, relay stations, fuel depots, waypoints, and surveillance systems will operate. Today, very few spacecraft exist there. But in 20 years, cislunar space will be the most valuable real estate in the solar system. Navigation, communication, defense, power distribution, transportation corridors. Every major nation knows this. China has already begun sending specialized satellites into cislunar orbit, a sign that they see this region not just as empty space, but as territory to be mapped, monitored, and eventually governed. NASA is trying to counter this with programs like the Lunar Gateway, a small orbital station that will act as a logistics hub for astronauts and international partners. SpaceX, meanwhile, sees cislunar space as the runway for Starship's interplanetary operations. 3 powers, 3 agendas, 1 region none of them can afford to lose. And all of this leads to one final truth that will define the next century. The moon is not the finish line. It's the starting line. Once the first base is operational, once fuel begins flowing, once launch costs drop below anything we've seen before, humanity enters a phase that experts call the exponential frontier. A breakthrough point where exploration no longer grows linearly, but explosively. Asteroid mining becomes profitable. Mars colonies become sustainable. Deep space telescopes become easy to build. Interplanetary trade becomes realistic. And human civilization breaks permanently away from Earth's gravity. That is what this race is truly about. Not a mission, not a landing, not a flag, but the birth of the next era of civilization. NASA wants to lead it. China wants to control it. SpaceX wants to ignite it. And the shocking part? Any one of them could win. Because at this moment, all 3 stand on the edge of the greatest transformation in human history. And whether the future is shaped by a nation, a partnership, or a private company, the outcome of this race will echo not for decades, but for centuries. Future generations will look back on this moment, right now, as the turning point. The moment humanity left one world and began building another.